Writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Write Pack. Welcome back to Write Pack Radio. This is your host, David Allen Lucas, president of St. Louis Writers Guild and the author of, lots of stuff. Actually, I've been having to try to find my old stuff that was on e-zines. They have gone away now, so they can't figure out which version they had. But with that said...
Co-host Kathleen Kayembe, paranormal romance author under the pen name Kaseka and Vita, and person wearing the shirt that says, "Let's get weird today."
We're all authors. We need to be weird. Go ahead.
Brad Arcook. I am the author of The Iron Chronicles, which is a steampunk adventure series. Check out Iron Horseman and Iron Zulu. They are out there. Find it all at bradarcook.com.
Fedora Amos. I write Victorian whodunits. My Jimmy McBustle Mysteries, which is what my new publisher has named it. And I like that pretty well. I also call them Victorian whodunits, of course. Mm-hmm. And coming out in February is Mayhem at Buffalo Bill's Wild West. I'm also president of Greater St. Louis Sisters in Crime.
And like I always joke, they are not nuns running around bumping off the priests.
Well, there might be a few. I haven't really checked that out.
That could be interesting. Go ahead.
I'm Melanie Claney, author of science fiction and nonfiction, and lately I've been writing about cats.
Are those nonfiction or fiction?
Author Lee Savage, writer of erotic paranormal romance, and under the name Carrie Lee Williams, children's books.
Meredith Tate, author of speculative YA and new adult, including the book Missing Pieces, which is a dystopian romance.
My name is Jennifer Stolzer. I'm a children's book author and illustrator, and I have worked with a couple of small presses, but I haven't been published with any yet.
And she now leads us into our topic.
Yep.
Today we're going to talk about publishing with small presses. Authors, you're living in a time that is of, how should I say, uniqueness in this industry.
Best of times, the worst of times.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to say the best of times.
The best of times?
The best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of... never mind. I'm going to hold off the quote from Dick...
I think you're going with Gargoyles, sorry.
Tale of Two Cities. Thank you. I could also be quoting the Mary-Kate and Ashley Mysteries, because they did that too.
Anyway, as if I ever had control over this. You've got the chance to still traditionally publish through the big names. Now, honestly, the last recession, to use a politically correct term, versus depression, which it really was, the number of houses shrunk. Some through mergers, some through going bankrupt.
Well, it wasn't just the last depression. I mean,
it's been slowly doing it anyway.
If you go back 10, 20 years, there were way more than the 7 that were before the depression. There used to be houses across the land.
Yes. And you've got the chance to go self-pub. But there is something in between, and they are still fall underneath traditional publish. And that is getting published with a small press. And with that, what are some advantages? What are some disadvantages? What are some stories? Brad, you first.
Well, real quick, we should probably mention that there are different types of small presses. So there are presses that run maybe 50 to 100 books a year. And then there are presses that are going to run like 5 to 15 books a year. It's a very big difference in the types of houses that are out there, but they're all going to get lumped into the category of small presses because they don't put out the 60 to 500 that the big boys will pump out, and maybe even upwards of 1,000 or so, or more that the big boys will pop out.
You had asked about advantages and disadvantages. In my opinion, one of the main advantages of a small press is that they're willing to take chances on things that may not have yet been proven in the bigger publishers. An example that I personally experienced is that my book, it spans over 17 years. And a couple of different agents, when I was querying the big kind of traditional way, told me that if I wanted to get published, I would need to decrease the age range because it would need to either fall in YA or new adult, and it kind of straddled that line. Whereas when I started querying small presses, they were a lot more open to that and to trying something that might not have been as marketable in the big presses. And of course, the other advantages are you get a professional cover designer and an editor, whereas if you self-publish, you would have to pay for those things yourself.
Yeah, it's an important distinction. You don't pay a small press to publish you. A small press is paying you the same way a big press would or anything else like that. You're going to get your royalties, per book as a percentage of each book and everything that goes along that. You're going to sign contracts. You may or may not have influence. A lot of small presses will take, suggestions from their authors as opposed to some of the larger houses, which will just be like, here you go.
Yeah.
I would also mention, though, that there's a difference between imprints and small presses. An imprint is a smaller version of a large house. So you can have Penguin and Penguin or Tor or something along those lines, and they will have smaller imprints that fall under them that may only publish 60 books a year or something like that, which puts them technically in the small press category, but they're an imprint of the big boys. They get the big boy money, they get marketing advantages, they get distribution advantages, they get all of that. So an imprint is different than a smaller house, which may be run out of a small Midwestern town, or something along those.
Well, a lot of small houses started off as independent, and they were kind of grouped into.
Sucked up into the
They
big
were
guys. Yeah.
swallowed by a larger house as an amoeba would gather food.
This is how actually bigger houses continue to grow.
Well, one of the negatives kind of a small press is the distribution. And now my small press, Omnific, they actually have a great distributor. They're partners with Simon & Schuster. But even so, because the books are not returnable and they're print on demand, they don't really get into bookstores. They get into bookstores if I go into the bookstore and I talk to the bookstore owner and get them to carry my book. But my book is not automatically in the catalogs that the bookstores are going to order from.
Wait a minute, are they not in the catalog or are they in the catalog but the bookstores don't choose to order them?
They're print on demand, which
Okay.
means that they're not returnable.
There's various levels. You can be at a print
Yeah.
on demand level, which means the printer will print up and it's orderable through Ingram or something like that. You can also have distributorship, and this is actually one of the big important things if you're going with a small press, is just what kind of distribution do they have and who's it with, because there are several different distributors and they have different levels that go into that, whereas you will have, maybe there's, my distributor holds a warehouse that holds a couple of copies of my book, so if anyone wants my book, it's there. They can just ship it off to them, no problems. There's no need to print. There's no printing times or anything like that. So it changes, but it's important because my distributor helps sell my book. So my book is going to be at BEA every year in a catalog in the booth. No giant flashy sign or anything. I'm not that big. But my book is in their catalog, and there is a sales agent who actually works for the distributor, who sells my book to the markets that he thinks it's going to do well in.
Real quick, Cabbage had a question for people who are new to the writing. BAE.
BEA.
Oh, BEA.
Not
It
Bay.
is the Book Expo America.
Thank you.
It is a huge conference convention every year in New York, which is the mecca of books. So if you love books, it's a great place to show up. But it's basically a conference and a con for publishers and distributors and that side of the industry.
Okay.
I just want to go quickly off of kind of what Brad said and what I said before, which is, again, with the print-on-demand aspect and distributors, don't let that deter you, because
No.
I have a lot of friends who are not only agented but Big Five published under a Big Five imprint that is also print-on-demand.
Yes, yes.
So going with a traditional or Big Five publisher doesn't necessarily mean you won't be, and again, you can get higher royalties with a small press. So again, there's positives and negatives, but you want to look at that before you...
And there are no giant warehouses full of books anymore.
Yeah.
Unless you're like the Bill Clinton memoir or something like that.
You guys have mentioned this catalog with a capital C. What are you guys talking about?
The mythical catalog. Dun, 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 dun. No, so basically the catalog is every year, every distributor puts out a catalog. It varies. And by a physical book, it's not really a physical book anymore. There might actually be a physical book. That'd be really cool, though. Most likely it's online, and it's a big, database that can be searched. And so every book that's going to get published in 2016 is in this catalog. And by now, it's already probably there. Because the catalog goes out sometime in the early spring. And basically every Barnes & Noble bookstore and everybody else in America that buys books goes to that catalog. And they can search through it for which books they're going to put on their shelves in 2016. And then all the metadata's in there, so the cover's in there, the back jacket copy of the book, the keywords, the BISAC codes, which are little codes that the industry uses to determine which shelf the book should sit on, and all of that. That is all listed in there, along with the ISBN numbers and all that kind of good stuff. And so it makes it super easy to search through. And there are different catalogs. So each distributor has a catalog. So Midpoint has one, Ingram has one. Technically, if you think of Amazon, it's a giant catalog. But Amazon's cataloging all books, and these are just the books coming out next year.
Are the catalogs updated the way like Writer's Digest Online is updated?
Yes.
All the time, or is it just January?
No. They are set by a certain date, and it's generally sometime in the spring, so that it's all set and ready for BEA, which is in the late spring. I think it's in May.
But it is updated in real time?
Oh, yeah. Well, every publisher knows what they're going to publish in 2016 pretty much already.
Okay.
So they're going through, like right now, I have to get all of this information together from my publisher so that it'll go into the catalog, so it'll be all ready by this spring.
That's an annual catalog that he's talking about that each distributorship has, like
Yes.
Taylor and Baker or whoever.
Yep.
But there are all other kinds of characters, too, that are not just for a single year. And that is an advantage of the small presses, because typically they will keep your books perhaps unto the next millennium. It depends on how long they stay in business, and it will be online. And they might also send out a hard copy, a copy of their catalog to the places that they expect to sell a lot of books. So there's more than one kind of catalog that we're talking
She
about
was talking
here.
about the one with the giant capital C.
and it's important that you make that distinction. And as
Yes.
I said, that's a key ingredient of the small press, because you can be in their catalog, you can be number one on their list for years and keep on getting royalties, maybe not too big, but keep on getting royalties for all the time that they have it listed.
Yeah, every press is going to create their own catalog as well. Every house is going to have their own catalog. Each distributor has their own catalog. As I was saying, Amazon is technically a catalog. So, yeah, I mean, there are a ton of them out there. But there is what's known as the catalog, which is like the pre-copy of Vogue or whatever, where, you know, everything that's coming out in 2016 is listed so that every library, every bookstore, you know, Barnes & Nobles to Walmarts to all those guys to, you know, the airport bookstores, they all pick their books out of there.
So, does that mean that if your book is coming out for the Christmas season, you know, in November, whatever, you need your cover and back jacket, whatever, like almost a full year in advance?
Oh, yeah. Books
You
that are
do
coming
anyway.
out,
That's not news.
my book comes
really.
out November of 2017, the third in the series. For that, my cover, my back jacket, all, as I was saying, the BISAC codes, the ISBNs, all that kind of stuff. I'm getting all of my side of that metadata, so the back jacket and everything that I need to put forward, my bio, all that kind of stuff, and I'm turning it in before the first of the year.
I'm going to go back to something which I'm going to take us back. This was lovely, was great, but Meredith, you said some of the negative things about small presses. I'm just going to share. It's really not my story to share, but the two authors I would talk about are not here. One is Peter Green, and the other one is T.W. Finley, who are both part of the Right Pack. They were originally published with a great small press, LL Dreamspell, and the lady who ran it, I got to meet, Linda. She unfortunately passed away due to an illness, and it's not my place. I wasn't going to say it.
Brad just throwing stuff out there.
That's fine.
Exactly.
Yeah, she died of cancer, and unfortunately, with her death,
secret.
so too was the death of LL Dreamspell. There was nobody to take over. She didn't set it up as either a partnership or an LLC of any kind. I don't know why she didn't. I'm sure there were reasons. But the good news side of that was Peter and T.W. Finley got back their rights to their stories, but there's still issues with that, and that's something to know about.
I just want to make 2 points about small presses. One of them, and again, when you're considering whether or not a small press is the right route for you, think about kind of your priorities and what's important to you. I know a lot of people who say that they want their book to look pretty and they want to have an input in what's on their cover. Some of the big presses, I have friends who got an email and said, this is your cover, this is what your book's going to look like. And they said, okay. Small
Titles,
presses
too. They can tell you what title you were
exactly.
My memory is can I change this? No, it's already gone to the printer.
Yeah, small presses, a lot of times they'll give you a worksheet, and that was my experience, and I've heard other people in small presses, same experience, where you can write down your characters' features, some themes of the book. They might take them, might not, but you at least get some say. And another thing to consider with small presses is who are you trying to reach with your book? For example, Missing Pieces, my book, was a romance. A lot of romance readerships are through ebooks, so they could still find my book, even though it wasn't in bookstores. It actually ended up reaching a lot of people, whereas if you write something like middle grade or YA, if it's going to be ebook only, a lot of times teenagers won't be able to access those books as easily. So I think that's something to consider if your book is digital only, which some small presses are.
Especially in middle grade, where print is 80%, 90% of your sales.
Right.
That's really important. One of the things I was going to throw out, though, is something Dave was kind of bringing up about the people who run these small presses. One of the reasons why L&L Dreamspell went away is simply the fact that the woman who's the driving force behind it passed away. There is no one to pick that up. You know, at these small presses, it's a very small staff. You know, maybe it's 2, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10. At the small press that I worked at, it was basically 2 of us, and then we had a bunch of interns and everything like that. So there is that concept, but it's kind of important. We had Mandy Schoen here a couple weeks ago, who was with Month 9 Books, another small press. There is always going to be that driving force behind the press. The person who's generally the owner, the publisher, the CEO of the press, and being able to work with those people, knowing that, like, that's kind of an important thing when you're dealing with the press, because you're dealing with this person. There is no other editor to switch to. There is no other person, no higher authority that you can run to. So, having that kind of, familiarity and kind of a good rep with the person is important.
And even if they survived the illness, as my small press editor did, it meant a really long period of time when everybody was just in a state of limbo because nothing was going to happen.
Exactly.
And it was a really long time. I want to say another thing, though, too, about the hard copies for middle graders. Owen Colfer says that you ought to make sure that your book comes out first in hardback so that the guys can hit their little brothers with it.
I like it. I don't know if my book's been used as a weapon, but I kind of hope it has.
I just wanted to say, though, that how important it is to research, because while there are some great small presses out there, kind of a rule is to see if it's been around, usually 2 years. See if it's been around for 2 years. There's a lot of kind of startup small presses that fail, that rights grab, want all your rights. And I think for me, a couple of things that help vet a small press is look up some of their books on Amazon. Read some of their books. Do you think that they're well edited? Are they full of typos? Is the cover nice? Are a lot of the reviews positive? Is there a mix? For example, I ended up, for my book, I got 2 small press offers, and when I was trying to look between them, one of the small presses on Amazon, a lot of their books had reviews that said stuff like, this feels like it was edited by a 3rd grader, and that was a huge red flag for me, because having a good editor is so important. And I mean, another thing to say with that is, what is the small press going to do for your book that you cannot do yourself with self-publishing? Like, if they can get you into a good distributor, get you a nice cover, a good editor, those are all things you can't do yourself unless you want to pay for them. Whereas if they're not going to give you those things, then those are some things to consider.
Just a quick sidebar, and then I'm turning this back over to Brad and then Kathleen. Who are the causes? If you heard the chuckle as Meredith started, too bad in some ways this is not video because Kathleen grabbed one of Brad's books and actually hit Brad with it.
Yes, thank you, bud.
A
Now my
dream
book is
came
officially
true.
me.
Now it's official. It's been used as a weapon.
No, it's a paperback.
Well, it wouldn't hurt enough then for a little brother.
Okay. Still used as a weapon. Meredith opened the door for contracts, and it's something we should definitely talk about.
Oh, yes.
Since you're dealing with a small press, you don't have an agent, most likely. Well, I take that back. You might have an agent. Agents run to small presses now all the time.
I was going to ask you that real quick, because I remember back, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in, but you opened the door, and I don't want to lose the door opening on that. Back, when I met Linda from LL Dreamspell, which Missouri Writers Conference, I can't remember what year it was exactly, but it's been a while. And
I met
back
in 2008.
then, that's probably is. That's probably the year I'm thinking of, 2008, 2009. And I got to meet her because none of the agents would have lunch with her because she was a small press.
Yeah.
They didn't want anything to do with it, which gave me a great opportunity, not so much to pitch anything because I didn't have anything to pitch to her at that time, but to learn a lot about the ins and the outs. Has that changed at all? You said now
most
they're
definitely. I would throw out that when the small press I worked at, we actually had several agented books, and I would send the acceptance letters for the books to the agent, not the author. So it's definitely changed, and to be honest, part of that is there are a lot of agents out there now, and there are only 5 big houses.
Right.
So there are a multitude of other places you can send a book. But when I'm talking about contracts, so if you don't have an agent who's going to review the contract for you and knows about everything about a publishing contract, that is something you need to pay attention to. As Meredith was saying, there are houses out there that are evil and want all your rights. However, most of those rights should be yours. A publishing house should not get all of your book's rights. So the reality is that you need to go through it. You can flag things in the contract and negotiate them with the publisher. A lot of people think that the contract they get from a publishing house is set in stone. It's set in a soft stone, so a lot of it is set, and they're not going to move on things. But there are things they might move on depending upon how much they want your book, how much they want to deal with you. So it might behoove you to get a lawyer to review it, or get somebody with a really good legal background, or at least read it several times and understand how much you're getting paid per book. What rights do you have? What other rights do you have? Can you put out an audio book? Can you do anything with these characters? What point does this book revert back to you for all rights? These are all big things to consider in contract work, and we could turn contracts into a whole issue, but I just wanted to bring up Yeah, we probably should. But it is something to know when you're dealing with a small house.
Yeah, I wanted to agree that I was looking at getting published by a small press earlier on a title that has yet to come out, hopefully someday, and heard similar wisdom when I was so excited about having a contract at all. And it was very important knowing what you just said, that the rights, this is not your only chance.
Yeah.
There are so many small presses out there, and many opportunities, and they're more willing to take a risk on something that might be a hard sell. Just because this one press says, we'll do it, we're your only shot, doesn't mean that they're telling you the truth. They're giving you the hard sell.
And you don't want to get locked into a bad contract.
No.
It will stifle you.
I have 2 things.
One, I was using the right word there.
One is,
thank you.
As I mentioned, when I was querying my book to small presses, and I got the 2 offers, I just wanted to share 2, when I had phone calls with both publishers, 2 questions that for me really helped clarify my decision. One of them that I asked was, tell me about some of your success stories. The publisher I signed with said, we have multiple New York Times bestsellers and this and that. And then the other publisher, not so much. And then I asked them, what are your plans to grow your publisher? How are you growing? And, of course, that was at the time when my publisher was merging with one of the big 5 and becoming a partner with them. And the other one, again, was like, well, didn't really have an answer. So to me, those are 2 really good questions that I think you should ask. I'd recommend asking. The other thing I wanted to go back to when Brad mentioned agents submitting to small presses, just something kind of to look at when you're querying agents is to look at that agent's sales record, and if all of their sales are to small presses and they're not maybe a part of a bigger agency that sells to bigger presses, that might be something to consider too, because while it's good to have someone negotiating your contract, if all their sales are to places that you can submit to yourself, why give up 15% of your sales?
Exactly.
On the contract issue, there are two things especially that one needs to look at, I think, that you may not even think of at all. And one is to make sure that the book comes out in some kind of timely fashion.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause I got bit in the behind on that one at one point in time. That is. And it wasn't something I had even thought about. So, and I also had a literary intellectual property lawyer look at it, and that person didn't mention it either. So even that is not that's not written in stone for sure. And the other is the characters, and don't let them get a hold of your characters, no matter what you do.
That's an important thing to remember too. Is that this book is your book, and it's there. But as we talked about in I think it was Mandy or no, it was Catherine's episode, the one with Catherine Rankovic. At some point, you are turning your book over to a publishing house, and it does become a mix of yours and theirs. But a lot of that is yours, so fight for your rights and fight for what you believe in.
Just to get us back, because contract talk is fantastic, and as we've mentioned, probably a good source for a completely different episode. Mm-hmm. This episode is about the pluses and minuses of working with self-published small presses. So I wanted to kind of steer us back in and share a little bit of something I consider a plus of a small press, being kind of on the production end of one. I've worked together on a contract basis with a local press. And the things that I've been doing for them, I'm an illustrator, but they asked me to do all kinds of stuff. This author would really like to have maps in his book. Can you do maps? Sure, I can do maps. This author, she likes the illustrations that she has, but she needs some extra ones. Can you match this style? I can do that, sure. Let's do that. And there's a lot more freedom, I feel, than working in a big house that has committees and contracts already in place that you're going to go to this person, you're going to go to that person, whether or not they're the best fit for your book, that kind of thing. So I just wanted to give a big thumbs up to small presses, because especially if you're using a local press, then you're going to have the opportunity to have local talent, which would be me here in St. Louis, working on your book.
With them too.
Yeah, and I've worked one-on-one with clients both personally with my freelance work and also through a press where I have a third party there to kind of just, keep in mind about the budget and, we're approved for that. I think we can handle that thing. Don't worry about this. And that's a nice thing to have,
You two tied, so I'll let you two fight it out. Okay.
Well, I just wanted to mention that publishing has one of the weirdest, strangest, and most self-destructive methods of dealing with things anywhere in the world. Because once a book, particularly mass market paperbacks, which is where the money is when you get right down to it, they go someplace to a bookstore and for 6 weeks, and after 6 weeks, if they're not sold, the covers get ripped off, sent back, and the rest is destroyed.
Yes.
Now, you wouldn't do that with a car, would you?
No.
Tear out the windshield and then throw the whole thing away.
I can't have a car sitting on my lot for 12 years and then decide I don't want it on my lot anymore and get full money back for it. You gotta love our industry.
I'm going to turn...
So, first of all, it's going to have a really big print run, and then if it gets a lot of it that is remaindered, oh my goodness, you're dead in the water forever.
That's why so many people use the print on demand now.
And that is not going to happen to nearly the same extent with the small presses, because typically they're either hardback or trade paper, and that will last a lot longer than mass market paper, and most of them will take care of you a lot better in that regard, and have a smaller print run too.
Smaller print runs, that's a huge advantage.
Sorry. Didn't mean to jump. Right before I give this over to Brad, just a small little trivia. The whole entire process of ripping off that cover and then destruction of the rest of the book is where we get the term pulp fiction from.
Yes.
Just FYI, because that pulp got reused. Go ahead.
Okay, so since we're talking about the pluses, I want to talk about my favorite aspect of small presses, which is niche markets. The entire point of a small press is that they are generally focused into niche markets. And to throw it out, there is a wonderful one up in Chicago called Albion, which does a lot of historical fiction and fun stuff like that. But my favorite, my absolute favorite, is what I believe is called Fireship Press. And they do nothing but nautical books.
Oh,
And they make millions of dollars, basically, and I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm going to throw out the yen word anyway.
Sure.
That just printing all the nautical books. So if you see a book with a ship on it that's about, like, some, great galleon or some whaling ship or some battleship or some craziness like that, and you flip it over, a lot of the times it's going to be from the same press, and that's their niche. So if you've written a nautical book, send it off to these guys, because there's a really good chance that they're going to publish it, and more importantly than that, they know the market. They've got the market cornered on nautical books. And that's a wonderful thing. Romance does the same thing. Western publishers are out there. Mystery publishers are out there. Poison Pen, another good one. So yeah. I love the idea that they niche market themselves and focus on a genre, and it's an important thing. So if you're writing in a genre, aim at the small press that dominates that genre.
Oh, you can go first.
I wanted to say that as an illustrator, I send samples to a lot of small presses, and it is amazing how sort of narrow the focus can get. Like, there are some presses that's like, we only publish people from Hawaii. That's or the Hawaiian press. And then there's the one that's like, we only publish books, educational books about insects. That's all we do. Yeah. We're the educational insect book publishing company. And if you want to draw insects, you send your sample to them, because that's what you're going to get.
Exactly.
I just wanted to go off that and again mention my small press Omnific is that romance has all these conventions. Like, for example, has to have a happy ending. Omnific's kind of niche is that they say that your book doesn't have to have a happy ending. They allow for books that break the romance rules and tropes. It just has to have a romance subplot. So kind of going off of that is that if you have a book that doesn't fall into the rules of your specific genre, there's probably a small press out there that is open to it and will love it.
My small press that I published with is Less Than 3 Press, and I absolutely adore them. They began because romance, gay and lesbian romance at the time, the publishers that were available, the small presses, were publishing primarily erotica, and they weren't so concerned with characterization or story. If you sent them a great story with, a gay couple, and there was a sex scene, there needed to be like 5 more. Mm-hmm. And the story would suffer, but it needed to be 5 more. They were going to publish it. So these women started Less Than 3 Press. Happy endings are, you need to have a happy ending or a happy for now ending. HEA, happily ever after, or HFN. And it needs to be basically a queer relationship going on. So no heterosexual main romantic couple, but like all across the quilt bag spectrum, you can have that.
Quilt bag spectrum, I like it.
So, because they've opened up, they started with gay and lesbian and have gone to like asexual, polyamorous, things like that. So, wider spectrum now. But if you want a good story and good characters and a lovely romance, then you go to them. If you want primarily erotic romance and you don't care so much if the characters are just cut out A and cut out B, you don't go to them. So that's their niche, and I love them for it.
I'm going to ask a question that I know pretty much the answer is yes, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Where can you or location anyway? Where can you learn more about these small presses? Are they all on Query Tracker? What?
Okay, so some of my favorite places to learn about the small presses, Absolute Right Water Cooler. Right is in WRITE. That's great. It's a forum, and they have literally every agent, every agency, every small press on there. You can go on there and read about people's experiences. Some of these are like 40 pages long, but it's invaluable for finding people who are going to be brutally honest about their experience with the publisher. Another good one is Predators and Editors. Predators is spelled wrong. It's spelled like editors on purpose, like to be play on words. Pre-editors, yeah. And that's another one where they either they write about the press and they can recommend them or not recommend them, but it's a great way to find them. And another way is just Amazon, as I said, looking at reviews of the books of that press, even buying a book by that press.
Mm-hmm. I'll let you two go, then I'm going to ask a question. So.
All right.
Oh. I was going to say, look at what you're already reading. Because if you're writing in that genre, figure out who's publishing what you're reading in that genre.
and I'm specifically children's at this point. There's a great series of books that come out every year, the Writer's Digests by Chuck Sambucino, published through, I use the children's book author and illustrator workbook guide.
Yes.
And there's just a section of that book that's all publishers, and most of them are small presses. They're invaluable to me because I also use those as possible clients, but every single one of them describes what they publish and how often they publish and what they're looking for and in what way you have to go about submitting to them. And I circle ones as like, oh, well, I could also submit to these people if they don't want to hire me. Mm-hmm. And that's been a great resource for me as well. And it comes out every single year, so they're mostly up to date.
Real quick, in the Catherine Rankovic episode, she mentioned the Writers Marketplace pay version, the online version, and the children's section is listed there. They also list the small presses there. So she said it was like $40 a year or something like that. So there are a multitude of places, both free and pay, that you can go.
Cool. Okay, now I'm going to play, once again, I'm going to do Cabbage Head. And by the way, if you're brand new to our show, the Cabbage Head questions are usually questions that beginners would ask, even though we may know all the answers to our own questions.
Yeah, we're not grown-up Cabbage Kid dummies.
Darn, that makes me more valuable. Anyway,
we're scared.
You've been saying that for months. This is the first time I knew what that means.
so then you know our own fellow panelists. Okay.
You were a cabbage head about cabbage heads.
We've been saying it much more longer than a month, actually.
Yeah. Months. Probably since I got here over a year ago.
But anyway, real quick question. Okay, pretend I am a non-published author of anything. And now I've written a book, and I want to go out there, and I'm always told, shoot for the stars, so that way I can land somewhere around the moon or whatever, or however that works. Shoot for the moon, land among the stars. I think I had that reversed.
Yeah, that's it.
But in all honesty, should I shoot for small presses first, or should I shoot for the big press, Brad?
Okay. Those of you who've listened to a long time know I used to be president of St. Louis Writers Guild. Now Dave is. He's awesome at it.
Thank you.
But I have this speech down pat. So here it is. Bam. Start at the top. So start with your agents. Get it perfect. Get it as perfect as you can get it. Have other people read it. Have them tell you that it's good. Not just that it's, you're a great writer or whatever, but say, I really love this part of it or something like that. Once you've gotten through the whole writing thing, we're going to leave all that because that's a different episode. Start at the top. So start with your New York top agent publishers who publish all the kick-ass authors who make all the kick-butt movies and everything else. Because that's the way that this industry works. You want to start at the top. Then from there, if you get rejected by those guys, okay, well, that happened. Then go to the agents that are, below them. And then go to the agents that, are not shiesty. And then you're going to go to the publishers that you can submit to. And I say that because not all publishers will accept unagented material, but a lot, especially the small presses, do. Then you're going to run through that gambit of small presses. Or, at that time, you can also decide you want to self-publish your book. But it's very much a top-down industry. So start at the top and work your way down, because you never know. You may have just written the next Harry Potter.
I'm actually going to disagree with Brad.
Feel free.
My personal opinion is that not every book, not every story, and not every author is the right fit for going for the top agents first or whatever. And this is coming from someone who I have queried. I have done what Brad said. I've always queried to the top, like the agents first and then gone down. But I just think, knowing some people, one of my writer friends in Oklahoma, she wrote a series that she knew right away she wanted to self-publish it. She didn't even try and query it, because for her, that was the right move. Her series has been enormously successful, and it's a zombie series, post-apocalyptic, which is not doing well in the traditional market right now. And for her, that was the right choice. And I think what you need to do is look at your own book, your own story, and your own personal goals for what you want to do with your career before you make that step. And I mean, querying agents is great, self-publishing is great, small presses is great. Sometimes you do go in that kind of steps that Brad mentioned, but sometimes that's not the right path for everybody.
I completely agree. So I'm going to jump on this real quick. And the reason why I completely agree is, in this industry, everyone will tell you what to do. And so I'm going to tell you not to, take everyone's advice with a grain of salt. So I'm giving you the best possible way to become the next J.K. Rowling, basically. But having said that, There are people like Amanda Hawking and Hugh Howry and other people who have self-published or gone through small presses. I even know a guy who went through a small press, got his book published through a small press. It did pretty well regionally. And one of the big five came in, swooped it up, changed the ending, and turned it into a New York Times best-selling novel. So your publishing path will vary. Let's put it that way. So find the road that's best for you.
You two are both dovetailed, so I'm going to let you two.
Well, I was just thinking this might not be, the traditional way might not be the best way for you. I just thinking publishing either through the big five or a small press seems like it takes a really long time. And if you self-publish, you can control the time frame. You can put out a book every 3 months. You can have the next episode, the next installment of your multi-volume novel, could come out and do that. And if you can write that fast and that well and have a good editor, that might be the best way.
Yeah, if you have a finished manuscript, you can publish it in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It's done on Amazon.
Perhaps you should.
Well,
I was thinking,
maybe
Can. Just because you can
You
do
did
it
say
doesn't
finished
mean you
manuscript.
should.
I will
Thank
give you
you.
that.
I said finished.
You did.
And I'm making lots of hand. What nobody ever sees on these things
He's
is
like
me
a
actually the
base
traffic
umpire back here. No,
He's a
stop.
third base
He's a
coach.
crossing
trying to
guard,
use signs.
or like the person who waves the airplanes, like go this way, go right, go right, go right, go
Stop,
right.
for the love of God.
You're breaking the day, but go ahead.
well, I think Brad's way might be okay for somebody who writes a James Patterson kind of committee, big potboiler kind of thing. Or if you could have something really strange and innovative, a J.K. Rowling kind of thing, yeah, start at the top, why not? That way you can say that you got rejected 147 times, because I think that's what's going to happen. I really do. And I think, Brad, that your way is fraught with a whole lot of pain.
But here's the thing. If you did write the next Divergent, the next Red Queen...
Yeah, but that's the predicate. The most of us do that.
But you might have.
Oh, I'm not finished.
So I'm not going to tell you to start at the bottom and work your way to the top.
No,
It
I'm
doesn't
not telling
quite
you
work
that either.
way as much.
My solution is something else, and it's the way that I have my two books out, and it is listen to your writer friends. They will tell if they know what you're writing and perhaps are critique partners with you, or at least know what you're writing, they can give you some of the most stellar advice you'll ever get. And if writers, I think, are enormously generous with their time and with their abilities to point you in the right direction. And let's face it, when you're starting out, that's what you really need, guidance.
Amen.
Sorry, you just reminded me. I have 2 books I've promised to edit, or at least critique.
So I agree with what has been said by 3 people.
Which one was not?
Even though we
Wait,
contradicted
was
each
there a
other.
4th person? No, okay. So Meredith, Brad, Fedora, I think they all have really good points. I do want to go back, though, to if you're writing in a genre, you're probably reading in that genre. So based on what you're writing and what your book or story actually is, you'll probably have some ideas on where to publish it. And the top choice for you, based on what it is you've written, might be different from one book to the next. Like, if I have like a gay romance that's got great plot and story and everything, but it's primarily a gay romance, I'm going to send it to LT3. I'm not going to send it to a big 5 publisher, because chances are they'll tell me to make one of those people a woman, and I'm just not into that, because that's not the book I wrote.
Better have them all die at the end.
Mm-hmm.
We love the book, but can you change everything?
Yeah.
And knowing my goals for that book, to keep true to the story that I wrote and that wanted to be written in the first place, I know that the top down for me is going to be a different list than it will be if I write, say, like a great mystery thriller starring, a character and there's a romantic subplot, but it's not the main thing. And maybe it's a gay or a lesbian subplot, because I wrote the thing. But I mean, it's not going to be a big deal. So if the publisher says change it, I'll still say no, but it won't affect the story to quite the same extent. So my list of top to bottom will be different. So know what you wrote and pay attention to what you're reading and who publishes them, because that'll change your list.
One of the joys of the small press is the fact they exist, because what you've heard here, I'm going to go like Kathleen said. I agree with everything that Brad, Fedora, and Meredith said. The road to publication, the road in our career, no two of us ever follow the exact same road. We have different things we write. We have different aims in our goals. And if you're like me, you have no idea where you're going with your career anyway. So, but you just have this picture, a landmark in the distance. As long as you're aiming yourself, right, a mountain, that I'm aiming myself at. You don't know how you're going to get there. And this is another avenue, another path that you can take. So I'm glad they do exist. Check them out. Are there any other advantages or disadvantages to small press that we haven't talked about? We've talked about quite a lot.
We haven't really talked about disadvantages of a small press.
Go for it.
There are some, as we've been throwing out a lot of their positive things, and I love small presses to death. I really hope to open one soon. But they do have some drawbacks. The first is the advertising budget. The advertising budget for your average book that comes out of a big five house that is their stellar topic for that year is going to get millions and millions of dollars chunked behind it. You're going to be in every magazine. They're going to be... I was in the New York subway recently, and there were book posters in the New York subway, and I was jealous as could be. But the point is that you're going to have maybe even get to do the Daily Show or something like that. So, you know... Those are the kinds of marketing budgets that's going to come from the big boys. Your average small press has barely anything. Their entirety of their budget is going to book production, book printing, to pay all the costs, to pay all the authors, to pay the editors and the illustrators, and all that kind of stuff. The actual production of the book. So the reality is a lot of that's going to get put on you as the author. And then it's up to you to find where you're going to put this book and how you're going to advertise it and all that kind of stuff, which, to be perfectly honest, if you're not one of the stellar titles coming out that year, is going to be on you as well. So advertising is probably one of the biggest ones. They just don't have the money to really sink into you. Now, what your hope is that by being a niche publishing group, and say they publish historical fiction, well, then, majority of the books that they're publishing that year are going to be historical fiction, and then all those authors can get together. You can all go to the Historical Novel Society together. And out of that, you can then, kind of market as a whole instead of just as an individual. So that's a big one. I mentioned earlier, if you have any issues with your editor or publisher, there's no one else to go to. At some of the big houses, you can... I really hate to say this. Sometimes you can lobby maybe for a new editor. More than likely you're going to get labeled as a troublemaker or something like that. But it is possible to get a new editor or something like that. It's kind of rare. But if you do clash, there is somebody you can go to. In a small press, it's that one person who does all this stuff. And there are other drawbacks as well. Depending upon the quality of the work that they put out. These are all things I would say look at before you actually sign the contract, though. So you should know the quality level of the book you're going to get before you've, put your name on that dotted line.
I had a question. When everyone was brand new sometime, if you're actually going with a brand new company and they want you to be the first or the third book that they publish and they don't have anything out and they're being very upfront of you about that, how exactly do you evaluate them?
It's a good question, actually. You're not evaluating what they've done, you're evaluating the people that you're working with. So, is the editor competent? Is the publisher competent? Is this the kind of stuff that you know that they're going to be able to do? As Meredith was saying, ask questions. Ask what they're going to do to grow. Ask, know that if you're the lead title, then you're the guy who's supposed to make the money that's going to be able to publish the next book coming after you and the next book after that. So, it's kind of then... hopefully, you get a lot of their attention. So you should kind of have all this sense, and you can go with a press that's just starting up. But these are all things you should ask. You should know what their plan is, what they're moving forward, what they're planning on doing. What's their 5-year plan? What's their 5-year plan with your book?
All right, so there's a press that I know that publishes primarily great stuff, but I've noticed there's one editor at that press whose books I consistently dislike and feel was this edited by a third grader thing going through my head. What do you do in cases like that where you know that there's more than one editor, but you end up with the one who edits like a third grader? How do you fix that? Anyone?
You can write to a specific
Anyone?
editor to begin
Yeah.
with, and probably
You should negotiate in your contract before you get to that
because
place.
it's an editor who accepts it, not your publisher.
Yeah. Depends upon the house. Some will have a committee that will go through and look at everything that they're going to publish.
But still,
that year.
you would go through an editor, a specific
Yeah.
one.
And that's
But as Manny was saying the other day in the episode that we had with her, when she picks up a book, that's her book. She's going to edit it. She's going to walk that book through to publication. So often you're going to be going after one editor.
That's also something too why an agent is good. That's your advocate. Fedora?
They're your pit bulls.
Did you still? No.
I was just going to say that a lot of small presses are a little bit more like family.
Yes.
And if you go to a local kind of conference, they're usually a little clatch of them there. And, you go out and have a few drinks. And it's kind of nice to have that.
Another great resource when looking at small presses is the press's existing authors.
Oh, yeah.
I have sent so many emails to so many authors, and usually they're very, very willing, as long as you agree not to spread what they say or spread their names or whatever. They're very willing to tell you up front the positives, the negatives, the bad, the very, very worst aspects of the press, and the very best aspects of the press. And one great question that I found to ask those authors are, given the opportunity, would you go back and go with the same press again? And that had been very eye-opening for me with the different publishers I've looked at.
It's a brilliant thing to do, and to be honest, you can request that of the publisher. Can I have the email addresses of your other authors so that I can talk to them?
They're all on Twitter usually, too.
Usually that, too. You can find them without. But, I've had authors request from us as a publisher the other authors there, and, we handed out their emails, and they were able to contact them and talk to them. One of the things I would mention, though, as Fedora was kind of mentioning about family, all small presses are small businesses. They're your mom and pop shops. So just like an independent bookstore can be a great place to go because you get a personal touch and you know the owner and you know how they are and you can kind of get that personalization. A small press is the same way. Generally, it's just a few people. One of the things I love about small businesses is their flexibility. So they have the ability to change midstream, flip something up, have that kind of flexibility built into them. And as Fedora was saying, if you meet them at a conference or at something like that, you're not dealing with just some random little publicist of the place. You're dealing with the actual people who do the work.
And and you're important to them.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you're their money stream. You're the product that they produce. So, an author in a small house generally is a pretty important person. So, you might have dinner with them. You might meet up for coffee a couple of times a month or a year or something like that. When I was doing author management, one of the things I was doing was meeting on a regular basis with all of my authors to discuss what is your marketing plan. How are you marketing this book? Let's talk about it. Let's figure out how to do this. Let's figure out the best path for you. And it's a brilliant thing because, not only then are you sitting there in your desk trying to figure it all out for yourself, but you have somebody who does this not only just for you, or, and what you're going to do, but then also does this for a dozen other authors that same year. So you can kind of pick their brain and, bounce ideas back and forth. So small presses have the ability to be, kind of a lot more hands-on, flexible, and I can't think of the word I'm looking for. I'm at a loss for words here.
Familial.
Yeah, but it's, there's
That sounds bad.
Oh, no. Like family.
Kinky family.
I don't think you're talking loud enough, Kathleen. I don't think our listeners actually heard your joke.
Kathleen is making snarky comments under her breath about things Brad is saying
Yes.
and making him lose his words.
It's okay.
It's hilarious for me.
One of these days we will have to publish a I should say the bloopers reel.
Let's start videotaping all this.
Well, that'll be an
not-
audio
let's
taping.
not
We'll
do
keep
that.
audio.
To be
I don't
fair,
want to do
though,
that
if we
visual.
did videotape last week, two of us were wearing DC and Marvel team, like the #1 team up group T-shirts, and today, one of the same people is wearing a Beauty and the Beast T-shirt, and a different person is wearing a Disney villains set of shoes. I think they planned this.
Things that you guys missed when we're at the tables. Okay. I have no idea where to go after that.
Small presses are awesome, but sometimes they suck.
I think you find that with any business.
Sometimes.
They can
Only
suck.
sometimes. But
So can big presses
Right.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they suck
Yeah.
most of the time, and then some of the times they rock.
I will say,
It's a
though, that when I published with LT3, I did not get to choose my cover, which makes me sad. Very sad.
It's the same all over.
But I was also one of the first books that they published, and that is why I'm guessing I got the cover I did. For the later one, the covers were much better. So once a publisher kind of finds its rhythm, they tend to be really good.
Well, jumping on that real quick, Iron Zulu, which is out now, check it out. That cover it was entirely suggested by me. Now, I was going off the basis of the Iron Horseman cover, and I was like, here are the things that I would like to change. And I gave her a bullet-pointed list of, suggestions. I didn't say that it must be this way. But I was like, I'd really like a train. I'd really like it to have kind of the yellows and oranges and beiges of Africa. I want the same kind of border so that it all looks the same as you go together. And I kind of was like, and I want some animals, African, because it's set in the savannas. So I was kind of suggesting that. And she ended up going with all of those suggestions and putting them onto the cover, and I really love the cover for Iron Zulu. So it is something, some small presses, I'm not going to say all, but some of them will allow you to put some input in. And I love that.
How did you even begin to do that? Did they ask you about your cover, or did you just email and say, hey?
No,
Big houses do too.
Yeah.
They ask you. That doesn't mean they follow what
Exactly.
you tell them, but they
Yeah,
ask.
it may not happen all the times, but yeah, they were like, do you have any suggestions, or send us some suggestions you might have, or, something along those lines. And when I was talking about all that stuff that I submit, my bio, my BISAC codes, I don't submit the BISAC codes, they do all that work. But the back jacket copies, the log lines, the tag lines, all that kind of fun stuff, which are all suggestions. I'm suggesting what it could possibly be. I don't think, maybe the log line stayed the exact same. But the back jacket changed slightly. My author bio stayed the same, But in that, I also put in suggestions for what I would love to see the cover look like.
The ancillaries, those are called.
Exactly. Thank you. I was trying to think of that word.
Okay.
I have a question for those of us who have published with small presses, and I'm stealing it from Miss Meredith.
Oh.
Given the opportunity, would you publish with a small press again?
Meredith?
I think I would publish with my small press again. I love Omnific. I had a great experience with them. If you write romance, submit to them. But would I submit to small presses again in general? I don't know. Probably. I don't know. Depends on how I decide my career goals are in the future.
And you might, maybe the question should be, would you submit to them first, or would you try it for the big house again, or would you go straight to
I
self-publish?
think if I were to write another romance, I would submit to them. I ended up signing with an agent for my science fiction and fantasy YA, so for that, I would probably go through him, obviously. But if I were to write another romance, I would definitely submit to my small press again.
To answer your question, I have one more in the Iron Chronicles series that'll come out November of 2016. So, obviously, yes, I'm going to continue publishing through them. Will I continue publishing through small presses? Definitely. If I write a nautical book, I'm sending it to Fireship for certain. They have locked down that market. So, yeah, definitely. If I have a niche book or something like that, yeah. But am I going to quit querying for agents or, bigger or Tor Forge or something, because I love Tor Forge and they may still accept unagented material. They used to. So yeah, I'll totally go for imprints and small presses and stuff like that.
I feel the same. There are certain things that are definitely niche markets. I would definitely publish with LT3 again. I know a lot of what I write is going to find a wider audience there than if I went to a big publisher. But, you know, if I have something that would fit a big publisher, I'll go from the top down. If I have something that I know will fit in the niche market and they've already got the market cornered, I'm going there first.
Now, I'd also say I will also probably do some self-publishing too. Knowing that I have total control in self-publishing, there's a definite, So I'm definitely planning on doing that. Because you do have total control in self-publishing.
You're going for big, you're going for small, and you're going for self.
Yeah, it's called being a hybrid author. It's the new, groovy term of the industry. But yeah, so it depends upon where that book fits best.
Me too. Leave all the doors open.
Exactly.
For more information on that, tune back to our episode with Angie Fox.
Exactly.
Which, sadly, is now, I'm thinking, really, I mistitled that one, being Paranormal Romance. Is it dead? Is it sleeping as a dead, or is it sleeping with a
You
dead?
were in love with that title.
I was in love with that title, but what came out of it is not.
Maybe
Yeah.
we need to retitle that.
Yeah, it's already out there. The links are created with the title.
Yeah.
Well, maybe when the rights revert back to us, you can retitle it and republish it under a different
Exactly.
I am the publisher, yes. Okay. And with that, actually, we are out of time. But we are going to continue something we started a couple weeks ago. And Lee, I'm going to turn the mic over to you.
Okay, I would like to offer a prize. In order to win this prize, what you need to do is go share the link for Right Pack Radio episode. Choose any episode you want to share. Come back to our Facebook page, share the link for where you shared that link for the episode. Make sure you leave a way for us to contact you, and the winner will get to choose any ebook by me, Lee Savage.
Yay! So with that, we're going to say have a great week writing. We'll tune in next week for yet another interesting topic in the writing industry. And I think by the time this airs, if you are a fellow nerd, geek, take your pick on words, hopefully you saw Star Wars. Have a good one. Bye-bye. The new theme songs for Right Pack Radio were written and performed by Meredith Tate. All copyrights remain with her. Right Pack Radio would like to thank STL Books for allowing us to record in their office. STL Books is an online bookstore specializing in new and used high-quality literature, children's books, and books written by or about St. Louis. Please visit them online at www.stlbooks.com or find their store on the Amazon.com website.